back then, but it gets confusing. But feruchemy, the first idea I had for it, I was sitting in high school, and I am an insomniac. And there are nights where I just do not sleep really well. And even when I do sleep really well, my circadian rhythm, whatever it is, I sleep really well if I go to bed at 4 and get up at noon. And that is not real good for high school. Right? I spent a lot of time during high school going to bed around 2 and then getting up at 6 and then going to school and then coming home and going to bed for 4 more hours and then getting up for dinner. But I would sit in high school some of these days where I had insomnia and I'd be like, ugh, and I was just miserable, right? And then I would go to bed that night. I'm like, I'm going to bed early, and I would just lay there for hours, which is partially nice because you guys get a lot of stories. This is, my brother, we shared the room, he'd just go to bed like that. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there like, well, I might as well do something with my time. What if I could fly? You know, stuff like that. And one of those nights I'm laying there, I'm like, I wish I could just store up this sleepiness when I'm tired and have some device that's like, yes, you have spent, you put the time of an hour of being sleepy into this and woke up during that time, and now you pull it out, and when you're not tired, you're suddenly sleepy, you go to bed. Boom, you're out. And it expanded into, what if, I could be weak for a day and then later on have extra strength stored up. And this became the first of the magic systems for the Mistborn books. I tried it actually in a book that wasn't Mistborn originally. That book didn't work for various reasons. One of my previous speeches another year told you about that period in my life. But if you were there, it's that period where I was really trying to chase the market and doing a really bad job of Brandon trying to write George Martin, because that's what everybody wanted, was George Martin books. So I tried. I was really bad at it. But anyway, Allomancy I developed for another one of those books that was during the bad era. There were 2 of them that failed. And I just wanted a magic system that was very visceral, very kinetic, and I wanted to be able to control metals, but do it in a really interesting, different way, and it built out of that. I expanded it when I wrote the actual Mistborn you've read, developing the powers based on what a gang of thieves would need. Like, I kind of took the archetypes of a gang of thieves. You got your tough person, you got your fast talker, you got your sneaky one, like that, and I built powers that would enhance their roles, because Mistborn was part heist novel, and I wanted to go there. And then I took that magic I'd come up with before with the kind of the very specific Magneto power type stuff, with the pushes and pulls and cause and effect, and brought that into it because it was just really fun to write. Hemalurgy was developed specifically to act as some sort of tying agent to tie the magics together and to kind of have a magic that was going to be very dangerous in the whole expanse of the Cosmere. And I kind of seeded that one intentionally. All right, we'll go in the back right there. How did I come up with shard pools to travel between the worlds? So what happened is, close as I can remember, it's been a long time now. As close as I remember, I wrote Elantris in like 1998 or something like this, or 99, and I, at that point, didn't really have the Cosmere in place. I knew I wanted to do some sort of grand epic. I knew I wanted to do some sort of thing, but I just wrote that book. Elantris is mostly a discovery written book rather than an outline book. And I wrote this book, and that's when I started to get a lot of these ideas. I stepped away from it, and I started writing a book called Dragonsteel, which was Hoid's origin story. And then I kind of got into the dark days where I was trying to be George R. R. Martin for a while. And then when I came out of that, I wrote the Way of Kings, right? And during those days, I was really looking for these tying agents. When I put the first shard pool in, I just am like, here's a well of power. I don't know what this does, right? I was discovery writing a book. By the time I sold Mistborn and Elantris, I sold those 2 in a deal in 2003. That's when I'm like, all right, now I'm going to do this for real, right? I've had all this trial run. I'd written 13 novels at that point, and I sold number 6 and number 14, Mistborn not being written yet. And said, I'm gonna do this for real. So I sat down with Elantris, and I built out the Cosmere, and I built out these things. I'm like, why do I have this pool of power? What am I gonna do with the pool of power in the next book? I want this to be a theme. And I started building out the Cosmere from there. And so part of it was organic, part of it was by design. Let's do one more question over here. Go for it.
Why is the record such a big deal? Especially since it's
Okay, it looks like it's going to go spoilery.
not going to spoil.
Okay.
As an American, I looked at it, it was like, oh.
Why don't you ask that when you come up to talk to me? Yeah, because that one I don't think I can answer that in a way that's not going to be spoilery. All right, we'll go right here. Yes. Are characters based on my family? A lot of times, yes. Though my wife has said I could never put her in a book. So a lot of times it's just things that people do rather than specific family members, and just kind of looking at human nature, taking a conflict someone has and extrapolating it into a larger character point. I will say though that most of the non-main core of Bridge 4, so you've got the main core of Bridge 4, right? You've got Teft, and you've got Moash, and you've got... These people were designed for the story. All the people around them, Leighton and Scar and people like that, are all my friends, right? There's one called Pete, right? You can guess who that is. Dan's not in Bridge 4 because I put him in Mistborn and tried to kill him off in various glorious ways. The first time he survives and everyone else around him dies, so it's okay. So I do use my friends, but mostly as cameos. Like, oh, that's my friend Ryan Dreher. That's Dre, right? They are in Bridge 4 and things like that. But I don't do a lot of basing on my family. All right, let's do another. Let's go right here.
What are some video games that you've played lately that have like narratives that you really enjoy?
What are some video games I've played lately that have narratives I really enjoy? So when I go to video games, it's interesting. I don't these days go to a lot of the heavily narrative games. And that might be because I've spent my whole day telling a story. Like, I don't, for instance, this is tangential. I'll get to the answer in a minute, but I don't do a lot of role-playing anymore. I used to do it a lot, and I don't do it anymore because I found that I was going every night and having written for 8 hours that day, sitting down and basically writing some more was just leaving me exhausted. And so that's where I kind of shifted to, my nerd game is going to be Magic the Gathering. I'm going to play that because it uses a different part of my brain. So video games lately, I play the Dark Souls games quite a bit. You missed me wearing my Sunbro shirt, that was yesterday. You get Pinky in the Brain though, so that's cool. Because I love how minimalistic their storytelling is, but how compelling it can be. And then I play a lot of 4X games. Like I played the new Stellaris expansion, and I played the new Civ 6 expansion, both when they came out the last couple of months. Stellaris is really great for creating your own story. I really like how they do that. And so, yeah, a lot of 4X games and a lot of just action games. Where in the past, I played all the BioWare games and things like that, and I'm still going to play like Fallout 4 eventually. I played all the ones leading up to it, but I just, when I sit down, I'm like, I've been doing this all day. Let me do something else. I played Undertale. Undertale was great. Yeah, Undertale was awesome, but I mean, that's been like 3 years now, right, or something like that. Yeah,
really,
right? You said recently. Maybe Undertale's been 2 years, but it's at least been 2 years. So Undertale's fantastic. If you guys haven't played Undertale, that's amazing. Yeah, it's a really good game. All right, we'll go. I'm gonna have to go in the back, but you can have it. Yeah, I'm gonna go right back here.
So I have a question. Could an awakened toupee be commanded to act like real hair?
Could awakened toupee be commanded to act like real hair? Totally, absolutely, yes. What's that?
Would it be convincing?
Would it be convincing? Yeah, I think that it would be. It depends. Yeah, it depends. It depends on factors, but I totally think that could be very convincing. Yeah. Yes. What's that? Yeah, go for it.
Could it also be given enough breath and command to protect?
Could you be given? Yes, it could. That would be really weird, but yes. Yeah, that totally could happen. You could be given a command to protect. All right, in the way back, we're going to the. I have to go to. Yeah. So can you belt it out for us? If I could only meet one of my characters, which one would I meet? Probably Seizen. You can say it's Seiz, by the way, if you want. I know a lot of people do. But I would probably mean Seizen. All right, another question on the way back. All right, can you belt it out in the blue shirt? Okay, ooh, the big one. Okay, movies, anime, video games, and I will assume television is in there as well. What sort of things are we working on? So, let me give you a little brief kind of primer on the stages most things go through to make a film. All right. So the easiest stage is something we call optioning. This is where a Hollywood producer usually comes in with some money and says, I want to rent the rights to this and take some time trying to develop it and then sell it to somebody else who usually is only, like a lot of studios, they're shopping for things that have had a bit of proof of concept done on them. And so a lot of the times what you do is you sell an option to a small producer and they rent the rights from you for, they pay like every year or 18 months a percentage of a final large lump sum that whoever they sell it to would have to pay to you to actually get the rights. That's really easy to do. Almost everything gets optioned. And the problem is, as soon as something gets optioned, most of the time it gets reported, and most of the time the reporters are just like, hey, this is getting made into a movie. And then, you're like, it's been 6 years, what happened? Well, that's a really small step. The next step that usually happens is a screenplay gets commissioned by those producers. They pay for a screenplay, get a screenplay going, and when the screenplay comes in, that's going to be the thing they take to the studios to try to sell the property into something big. And that's actually a decently easy step. I mean, screenplays aren't cheap, but most things, so I have gotten there a lot. Right now, Mistborn is there, Stormlight is there, The Emperor's Soul is there, Reckoners is there. We just sold the Legion books as an option, so it's one step beneath. Basically everything that I have hops between these two steps perpetually. The next step is an enormous one. And usually this step is attaching a major star or director. Sometimes it's just the studio gets involved without that, but usually that's what happened. You guys noticed like earlier in the summer where a certain fantasy novelist said, oh yeah, Lin-Manuel Miranda invited me, yeah, this was Pyrophos, right? Lin-Manuel Miranda invited him to come see Hamilton and then attach to his property, and then suddenly it's actually in production, right? That jump is a huge one. Somebody needs to attach to it, and I have never had that happen. Across a dozen years of doing this, we're still hopeful, but that step has never occurred. And then there's like one last step, which is the studio greenlighting and funding it, which can still be a pretty big step. But once you got that, yeah. So those are really in brief your steps. We haven't made the big hurdle yet on anything. I'm still hopeful that we will. In fact, I'm confident someday something's going to happen. But right now, all I can say is we have not done that yet. And if the big step happens, I'll make sure you guys know. If your uncle is Joss Whedon, have him call me, right? Something like that, right? All right. Video games are more likely, but we spent a lot of time trying to make a Mistborn video game, and it just didn't end up working out. The funding fell through, it didn't come together. I'm sure we will try again, but nothing is moving right there at all right now. As for anime, I don't know how those get made. I don't know that business very well. If the right people came to me and offered, I would be game. But as far as I know, that doesn't happen very often. Like Miyazaki did it a couple of times, and I don't know that anybody else ever did. And so usually in Hollywood as an author, you just kind of sit around and wait and see who comes to you and is interested, and hope that it turns out for the best. I know you want to hear more than that, but that's basically all I've got. Let me check the time. Oh, it was my phone that fell over. All right, we're going to just do a couple questions over here. Go ahead.
So I have a question. It's actually from a friend of mine who couldn't make it here tonight. But we were wondering, what does chol meat taste like? Surf, turf, or both?
What does chol meat taste like? Surf, turf, or both? I would go both on that. Definitely both. Little bit of each. Go ahead. In Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians, why did it make the librarians evil? I'm going to tell you it straight up. It made me giggle. It just made me giggle. The idea of librarians, like I had this image in my head of this kindly librarian, kind of elderly behind the thing with the battle axe, right? And her hand on the battle axe if you said the wrong things. And then you're like, yeah, anyway. All right. We are running out of time, so I'm going to have to go over here. Go ahead.
What's your advice for Patrick Roth?
What's my advice for Patrick Rothfuss? I've never been asked that before. I would say, Pat's process is very different from mine. We are about as opposite as you can get in process. He's a discovery writer, I'm an outliner. He's a prose guy, I am a dramatic climax writing sort of guy, right? Like, these are two very different things. We're pretty good friends. We like the same sort of stuff, but I don't, he has to just work with his process. And my advice to him would probably be not what you want to hear, which is just, you know what, talking about it with your fans just makes everyone angry. You just need to go off and do your thing, which is kind of what he does. I can talk about it with my fans because I can say, when I have done this much, it is this much this percent of my outline, and I know after a lot of practice what that translates into. But even I'll talk about this in a minute, but I ended up pulling a book recently, right? If you read my newsletter, I yanked a book because it didn't turn out right. So there's an art to this, no matter how much you outline or things like that. Sometimes things just don't work. So, all right, one more question. One more, we're going to go way back. All right, go ahead.
So your website, Progress Bars, you have a mystery project on it?
Yes.
Can you tell us anything?
Can I tell you anything about the mystery project? I'm going to read to you from the mystery project next. So